What's up, boxing fans? I'm Michael Montero for Boxing Monthly. You're watching the Neutral Corner for the week of November 12th. So in this month's issue of Boxing Monthly, we have features on Sergey Kovalev and Andre Ward. Both are very, very good reads. Little known fact about about Sergey Kovalev that a lot of people don't know. He wasn't getting paid for his first 18 pro fights. Basically, Igis Klimas, his manager, was basically taking care of the costs of his living and all that, putting him up in housing, feeding him and stuff, but he wasn't getting paid. His first actual fight purse, was in his 19th pro fight for $5,000. Talk about coming up the hard way. That's Sergey Kovalev. But enough about that. We got some time to talk about that fight. Let's get into some news and notes. Not a lot to update you guys on. There's more stuff coming up, I think, over the next couple weeks. But I want to talk real quickly about this WBA heavyweight situation. Just after I filmed last week's episode, they announced what they were doing with the fiasco right now going on in the heavyweight division. As you know, Tyson Fury had a couple of the titles. He vacated them because of some of his troubles. So the WBA, in their infinite wisdom, they sanctioned a fight between Lucas Browne and Shannon Briggs. Remember him? Shannon the Cannon Briggs. Let's go, champ! Sanctioned that fight for the regular title. And the winner of that fight is mandated to immediately face Frez Oquendo. Remember him? Now, Frez Oquendo, I think, originally had fought Ruslan Shagayev. I want to say this goes back a couple years. I don't remember the exact dates, but there was some kind of controversy or some kind of issue with the first fight. Oquendo's people protested. I think Shagayev won. Maybe it was a disputed decision or something. I don't remember the details. Frankly, I really don't care. I just don't care about Frez Oquendo. But he basically won legally. I don't know if it was in court or basically threatened to go to court if he didn't get a rematch. But Shagayev ended up losing that title to Lucas Browne, and there was this whole thing that's happened since then. Lucas Browne, of course, went on to test positive for clenbuterol. He disputes it. Other fighters that have tested positive for that drug have kind of been let off the hook because there's still a little bit of gray area when it comes to testing for that drug. I believe it was clenbuterol. And he claims, Lucas Browne, that he had no issues, wasn't taking anything, that it must have been something he got contaminated with over in Russia. Several Russian fighters have been tested for that drug or have popped for it. So a lot of gray area and suspicion around all of that. But through all that mess, we wind up with this fight between Lucas Browne, who I think is deserving of the fight, given everything he's been through and accomplished this year with that fight over in Russia against Shagayev, which I think was one of the finer heavyweight fights we've seen in recent times. And when you consider what he went through going into the Lion's Den, literally, and taking the title, I thought that was a good performance. So he deserves this fight, but to put him in there against Shannon Briggs, who just doesn't deserve this fight. And I like Shannon. I've met him in person. He's a funny guy. He's really, really personable. Great, great guy. But man, this could get really, really dangerous. And then the winner of this fight, which should be Lucas Browne, he should be heavily favored here, he immediately has to fight Frez Oquendo to clear up all that legality, all that crap. Meanwhile, the WBA also has sanctioned and given the green light for Vladimir Klitschko and Anthony Joshua to fight for the super title. Now, this is the title that Klitschko held for years until his loss to Tyson Fury. And there's a lot of gray area around that win because of all of Tyson Fury's problems and controversy with performance-enhancing drugs. People say he tested positive, others say he didn't. There was supposed to be a hearing, it never happened, so maybe it's much ado about nothing. But the WBA situation right now is just a mess. And Vladimir Klitschko, as I stated a second ago, he held that title forever until losing it. Fair and square, as far as I'm concerned, until we hear more, to Tyson Fury. But Anthony Joshua is just still a prospect. Is he ready to fight for a quote-unquote super title? I don't know. But we're going to get Klitschko Joshua probably in the first quarter of next year. And maybe after Browne, Briggs, Oquendo is cleared up and Klitschko, Joshua is cleared up, the winners of those two fights fight each other toward the end of next year. Probably won't happen until 2018. The WBA promised, I feel it was a year or so ago, to clean up their mess with the multiple titleists in each division. It hasn't happened. I stated long ago, I stated multiple times, I'll believe it when I see it. I'm still saying that with the WBA. This is just a mess. But if we get the eventual winners of the two fights to go up against each other, I think we got a nice matchup on our hands. I actually think Klitschko-Joshua is a pretty fascinating fight. So, and even you look, Brown and Briggs, that'll be fun for a few rounds. And then I think it's going to turn into kind of ugly fight. The winner of that fight against Fresno Kendo, yawn. But what else is going on? Oh, the co-feature for the Hopkins-Smith card that I couldn't talk about last week. I was sworn to secrecy. It's out of the bag now. Joseph Diaz Jr., Jojo Diaz, is going to go up against Horacio Garcia in the co-feature. I love this. Here's the whole thing, right? I actually interviewed Jojo Diaz. I hung out with him at the gym, him and his father recently, and that's how I knew they were going to fight on that card. And some of the folks from Golden Boy called me and confirmed it, but they're like, you can't say anything. You can use it in your piece that's coming up down the pike, but you can't officially announce it until we do. Well, now they have. So this is great for Jojo Diaz. He's staying busy. They were going back and forth, Golden Boy was, possibly putting him on the 12-16 card, that HBO Latino card, or the 12-17 card. Now, you guys know there was supposed to be a fight between Orlando Salido and Takashi Miura. When that got scrapped, they thought about putting Jojo Diaz in that slot. And I think it's a smart decision. And it's great exposure for Diaz, who's one of the finer young prospects in boxing. And considering a fight that just happened last weekend, which I'll talk about in a second here, on the Pacquiao-Vargas undercard, there's a potential opponent there for Diaz in the future. And they have history in the amateurs. We'll talk about that more in a second. But that's really all the news and notes for this week. Let's get into the review of last week's action. So as I just mentioned on the Pacquiao-Vargas card in Las Vegas, there were several good fights on here, but the opening fight was kind of a stinker. Zhou Shiming, the Chinese fighter, wins a almost near shutout decision over the Thai fighter. This was a rematch, Pratsiksuk Phaprom, for the WBO flyweight title. And all four of these televised fights on this card were for WBO titles. The WBO must have been the sponsor of this card or something. I guess they've really bought into the top rank business the same way the WBC has bought into the PBC business. It's interesting how that works. But so anyway, Zhou Shiming gets a title here. He did drop Phaprom in the second round. He was showboating a little bit late. You would have liked to have seen him really try to step on it and get the guy out of there, but he probably wasn't going nowhere. It looked in spots like he might get the Thai fighter out of there, but he hung tough. And this dude really looks like a mini Manny Pacquiao. It's kind of funny. But the scores, let's see, 120 to 107 two times, 119 to 108. Okay, so basically Top Rank bought a title for Zhou Shiming. And now they could take that over to China. They could defend it a few times against nondescript opponents, and that's what I think they're going to do. They're going to milk that title as long as they can until somebody works their way up into a mandatory position that can actually beat Shiming. He's probably a top 10 flyweight, the lower end of the top 10, but he's not an elite level flyweight. He's never going to be. He looked better in this fight than he looked the first time he fought Phaprom, which was a couple years ago. So he has improved. He looks more like a professional fighter now than he did when he first started, where he looked very amateurish, but he's just not an elite level pro fighter. But here's the thing, Zhou Shiming has opened up the floodgates to the Chinese market. You're talking well over 1 billion people, 300 million of whom tuned in for his pro debut, which was a 4-round fight, right? So Top Rank, they're ahead of the game in this kind of stuff. They started working with fighters from Latin America way before other American promoters did, and they're opening up this market over in China. Of course, the whole thing with Manny Pacquiao opened the floodgates over there in the Philippines and the Asian markets. Really, really smart business by Top Rank. They know what they're doing when it comes to the global scene and promoting these guys. Boxing is more global than ever, right? And Again, as I stated, you're talking over 1 billion people in China. I know for a fact, because I talked to friends I have over there are gyms opening up all over the country. So it's not that boxing is becoming the most popular sport, but it's becoming a more known sport. And when you have that many people in the country, it's only a matter of time before we start getting better pro fighters coming out of China. And I've said this for a couple years now, and I still get laughed at when I say it, but damn it, one day I'm gonna be able to go back to these videos and show all of you that I was right. Within 20 years, we will have a heavyweight world titleist from China. Mark it, book it, it's gonna happen. Now, the next fight, Oscar Valdez scores a 7th round TKO over a Japanese fighter, Hiroshige Asawa, for the WBO 126 title. This was Valdez's first defense. He's now 21-0 with 19 knockouts. He was up 60-54 3 times at the time of the stoppage, which tells you this was a complete domination. Completely dominated the Japanese fighter, dropped him in the 4th round, got him out of there. I like Valdez a lot. And I think that he's turning into a very, very fine professional fighter. And he showed some real mettle in fights where he's had to get off the canvas. He's had to fight through adversity. The one criticism I still have of him is his offensive diversity. He's one speed. He's one speed all the time. And as a matter of fact, just yesterday, I shot some new episodes of 10 Count for Undisputed Champion Network in Santa Monica. And we did an episode on this card, and that's one of the things I talked about with Oscar Valdez. He has to diversify the offense, because once he steps up and starts fighting the elite level boxers, guys that can time him and counter him, if everything's coming at one speed, yeah, you might be throwing hard shots, but if you're not setting them up, they're going to time you and counter you, and they can beat you. So he has to work on that. But Oscar Valdez now has a title at featherweight. I just talked a minute ago about Joseph Diaz Jr., who is one of the best featherweight prospects out there, and he's with Golden Boy. Obviously, Valdez is with Top Rank. So Golden Boy and Top Rank get along. They do fights together. These two are on a collision course. They fought once in the amateurs in the World Championships over in Baku, Azerbaijan, I think in the end of 2011. They had a very, very close, tough fight. And Diaz pulled it out, barely pulled it out to qualify for the Olympic team. He was actually the first member of the Olympic team and the youngest member of the American Olympic team to qualify that year. And it was with that win over Valdez. These are two guys that have had their eyes on each other for a long time. And I just talked to Diaz and his father in the gym a couple weeks ago, and they said, we're looking out for this guy and we want to fight with him. So these two are on the collision course, and I think it could be a fantastic featherweight matchup maybe late next year. These two guys are going to keep circling each other. Just keep your eyes open and just look for interviews where they talk about each other, because they really, really want that fight and they have that history. So it should be good stuff coming down the line. In the co-feature, Jessie Magdaleno wins the WBO Super Bantamweight title, takes it off Nonito Donaire with a unanimous decision win, 116-112 twice, 118-110. I thought that 118-110 score was far too wide. I thought this was a pretty close competitive fight, but I thought that Magdaleno clearly won. Nonito Donaire and some of the fans there in the house at the arena, Thomas and Mack Center, there were over 16,000 fans, which is very, very surprising. And most of them are Filipino. A lot more Filipinos than Mexicans there. Very, very surprising. And a lot of them didn't like this decision. But look, the right guy won. Nonito Donaire, I thought, started very, very sharp. But as the rounds progressed, he landed some shots on Magdaleno. But Magdaleno stuck to his game plan. He didn't fall for the traps. His corner gave him very, very good advice. Manny Robles is turning into a very, very good trainer, one of the better trainers and one of the better, hotter gyms coming up in boxing right now here in the LA area. But Magdaleno, it was his right hook versus Donaire's straight right hand. And as the rounds progressed, I just thought that Magdaleno's right hook from the southpaw stance was doing more work. And he wasn't falling for Donaire's traps, and Donaire just never made any adjustments. He kind of was staying at that one speed, just trying to use veteran tricks to trap this guy and land one big punch. It worked a few times early on, but Magdaleno saw what was coming, made some adjustments, and I thought stuck to a very, very good, very disciplined game plan, and clearly took this fight. He's 24-0 now with 17 knockouts, and he's obviously a major player now at 122 pounds, which is a fun division. There's some good fights that can happen there. The question is, can Top Rank and Al Haymon, who apparently are working together now, everything's cool. Haymon has a lot of the fighters at 122 pounds. Can they make some bigger fights happen there? We haven't seen them make a big fight yet together, right? Since this marriage that they claim to have. You know, Top Rank dropped a lawsuit. I think there might have been a settlement. I don't know. They came to an agreement, right? But we haven't seen them come together with two of their better young fighters meeting each other. So I'd like to see that. But in the main event, Manny Pacquiao scores a unanimous decision over Jessie Vargas. It pretty much went the way I told you it was going to go. 118, 109 twice, which were the right scores, and one horrible score from Dave Moretti of 114, 113. Dave Moretti does not like Manny Pacquiao. Just doesn't like the guy. I don't know what it is. There was one knockdown in the second round, and you know, this was a point that I've heard brought up by a few people. Everyone's talked about Manny Pacquiao, accusations that, performance-enhancing drugs back around 2009, 2010 that were started by Floyd Mayweather, basically to, I think, avoid that fight and kick the can down the road for a while. But everyone said, look, this guy was punching with so much power, and now he has no power to his punches. Well, if you look at recent years, he dropped Chris Algieri several times. He dropped Timothy Bradley earlier this year. He dropped young Jessie Vargas in this fight. And this was, yes, substantiated, confirmed, VADA testing. So Pacquiao's been doing VADA testing ever since they were a thing. He's been passing with flying colors, been part of that program, and he's still putting guys on their ass. No, he's not concussively knocking them out. But he never concussively knocked out any welterweights. That's a rumor, again, started by Floyd Mayweather and those guys. The dummy graphic, as we're calling them now. That's the PC way of putting it, the dummy graphic. Pacquiao, the last guy he concussed and knocked out in a devastating way was Ricky Hatton at 140 pounds. Before that, it was David Diaz at 135 pounds. At 147 pounds, he hasn't knocked anybody out like that. There's been a couple of accumulation stoppages, right? That's it. But the power, still dropping dudes at this stage of the game, 37 years old, VADA testing. So there you go, guys. Now, the question is, where does Manny go from here? Floyd Mayweather happened to be there in the arena, ringside. So was Terrence Crawford. Obviously, if you're Top Rank, if you're Manny, I've told you guys for a while now, Manny is only fighting for the money. He's not fighting for legacy. He's not fighting for the fans. Sorry to tell you that. He's fighting strictly for the money at this stage. They would rather do a fight with Floyd Mayweather. And him being there, Floyd had no reason to be there. It's not like he's a huge Manny Pacquiao fan and loves Bob Arum, right? Obviously, they're going to look into this thing. They're going to crunch the numbers and see if they can make it work. Here's the thing. Floyd Mayweather and Manny, but especially Floyd, are going to have to take a major pay cut if this rematch is going to happen, because there's no way they can do another 4.5 million pay-per-view buys. 1.5 to 2 million buys, I think they can do that, but that's less than half of what they did before. So the financial demands are going to have to come down. Maybe they could do some sort of small guaranteed purse plus a percentage of the pay-per-view upside, the foreign TV rights. It's going to be another tough negotiation, but best believe they're going to look into that first. If it doesn't happen, if Floyd and Manny, one or the other or both, price themselves out of that fight and it just doesn't work, then I think you're going to possibly see Manny Pacquiao versus Terrence Crawford. The question for that will be, which weight? The location, it's going to be Vegas. So those of you who think Manny would go to Omaha, no, it's not going to happen. He's a Vegas fighter. He's going to be in Vegas. But would it be at 140 pounds or would it be at 147? I would think that Manny would want to bring Terrence Crawford up to a weight he hasn't fought at yet. Even though Terrence Crawford's the bigger, stronger guy than Manny. Manny's a blown-up lightweight. That's what he is. But that's kind of what Crawford is at this stage. I think Crawford will fill into a welterweight frame eventually. But I think at this point, if that fight does happen, I would expect them to try to bring Terrence Crawford up and bloat him a little bit at a weight he hasn't fought at yet. But more to come with that. One of those two fights will happen next year. Let's get into the preview of this week's action. So a couple of cards of note this Saturday. Over in Monaco, Luis Ortiz, the Cuban heavyweight, going up against Malik Scott, the American, seems he's been around for a billion years, but this will be his first fight in 2016. For Ortiz, this is his first fight with Matchroom Boxing after getting out from the Golden Boy Promotions contract and paying those guys a little money to get out of that contract. This is going to be on HBO, Championship Boxing. It'll be interesting to see how Ortiz looks against a tall guy with some good boxing skills. Say what you will about Malik Scott, he is a tall, athletic fighter, and he's sparred with everybody. I mean, go back to Lennox Lewis. He sparred with Lennox and guys like that. That's how far back he goes. He has a lot of experience being in there with good heavyweights. So as far as his craft goes, he's good to go, and maybe he could give Ortiz some good work. The problem with Malik Scott is he spent too much time sparring early on in his career. That's my personal belief. And he has a sparring partner mentality. You know, for Ortiz, let's see him. I would love to see him just go out there and try to just destroy this guy. Just blitzkrieg him like Deontay Wilder basically did. The Wilder knockout a couple years ago, I think Deontay Wilder stopped Malik Scott in one round, but it was a weird kind of a shot. It was more of Malik Scott just taking a knee and not wanting anymore. I'd like to see Ortiz really make a statement here. Really go in there and put an ass whooping on Malik Scott. Not that I have anything against Malik Scott. I just want to see Ortiz get that momentum going. You know, he had some momentum going there for a while toward the end of last year. It's kind of fallen off this year with all the promotional issues and everything else. So I'd like to see him kind of get that head of steam rolling again and put on a good performance. In Philadelphia, here in America, everyone's favorite son of the PBC, Danny Garcia, going up against Samuel Vargas. Now, there's a lot of Vargases in boxing these days. If you're scratching your head as to who Samuel Vargas is, he's most well known for getting destroyed over 4 rounds against Errol Spence last year. He's a native Colombian who now lives in Canada. So he's a Colombian-Canadian or Canadian-Colombian, however you put that. For Garcia, he's a Philadelphia fighter, right? This is his first fight in Philly since 2010. That's too long for a fighter to not fight in your hometown if you're trying to build them up and build a fan base, you know? But we've talked about these issues with Premier Boxing Champions before. No reason to beat a dead horse. For Danny Garcia, look, he beat Lucas Matisse in September of 2013. Good performance. Good performance. And at that point, he was the 140-pound champion, and he was seen as one of the bright young budding stars in boxing that could really move up in weight into the welterweight division and do something. Since that time, he has fought Mauricio Herrera in a fight where he flat out got a gift in that decision. Rod Salka, one of the worst mismatches in a headlining fight in years on premium cable. Lamont Peterson, in a fight that many felt Peterson won. I felt it could have went either way. It was a very, very close fight, but struggled with Lamont Peterson. An old Paulie Malignaggi, a very old Robert Guerrero, who I believe was coming off a loss, and now Vargas. Here's the thing. That's a horrible schedule over the last 3 years. Horrible! Here's a guy who was right at the cusp, right on the bubble of breaking through and just... It's like that helium balloon, that happy birthday balloon you bring to your mom on her birthday, right? And it's floating at the top of the ceiling, and after a few days, the helium falls out, and it's just laying on the floor. That's Danny Garcia's career right now. But All is forgiven. If he puts in a good performance here, he really should get a stoppage win. He should make a statement. He's not going to blow this guy away like Errol Spence did because he's just not that dynamic of a puncher. But he should get a stoppage here. And it's all lined up for him to face Keith, one-time Thurman, March 4th next year. That's a fantastic fight. It's 2 top 10 welterweights. The winner of that fight is clearly the top 3-4 welterweights right now. Depending on the performance, depending on how some other things play out between now and then, it might be the winner of that fight might be the top 1 or 2 welterweights in the world. So all is forgiven. The boxing is what have you done for me lately? If Danny Garcia passes this, I don't want to say test, but if he looks good, performs well, it hypes up that fight for Keith Thurman next March. And that is a really, really good fight. I hope there's no delays and it comes off. But that's it for this week, guys. Let me know what you think. Comment, like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. I'll see you guys at the fights.